Let's talk about Aurora Veil. So my Alolan Ninetales guide, I did not include Aurora Veil for a few reasons, mostly because I had plans for this video, and I did not want it dominating the discussion, because it's pretty much Aurora Veil Ninetales, done, 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 talk about doubles, and then that's kind of it. But with this guide, it ended up going a lot longer than I expected already, mostly because I wanted to look into the uniqueness of Ninetales. It's a very fast Snow Warning Pokemon, but also lacks damage. At the same time, it has a unique typing, but it can't really accomplish too much to that because it's very limiting, that you get walled out by Steel and Fire-type Pokemon. So it's about building the right amount of coverage for the Alolan Ninetales, and then just comparing it to some other things. I ran damage calculations, and then my idea as I was building the video, I was like, if I just talk about Aurora Veil separately, we can look at the strengths now and then see if they get any crazier with the usage of this new move. Also, the one weird thing about Aurora Veil is in my research, I didn't really get a hard answer as to what it does. That on Bulbapedia, you know, how much damage is reduced? Does reduced damage for moves that deal direct damage? Basically, is a combined reflect light screen? You know, we don't really know, but right now the best guess is that yes, it's like light screen and reflect all put into one move. And even on Cerebi, it doesn't say anything like halving. It just says lowers damage from physical and special moves for 5 turns. Same with Reflect. Like, Reflect will actually say halves, but this one only says reduces damage. So there's still a little bit of questions up in the air, and I tweeted out and I did get a response. In singles, it's half, and in doubles, it's 1/3, according to a Spanish wikia. So not sure how accurate that is, but kind of giving us an idea as to what to expect out of the Aurora Veil. I also learned a lot of things in general while doing research for this video. I did not know that in double battles, Reflect and Light Screen only reduce damage by 1/3. I thought it was a half no matter where you went, and maybe if people don't know this, then they might have conflicting results for what's going on with Aurora Veil. It might still be half in singles, 1/3 in doubles, but if they're using like doubles primary, they might be saying, oh, it's only 1/3, it's only 1/3, because it's too strong to just half for both in a single turn like that. Also, Psychic Fangs does affect the Aurora Veil along with the Brick Break, so Aurora Veil will disappear immediately if you don't use this Defog, Brick Break, or Psychic Fangs. There was a lot of discussion as to whether Brick Break actually worked against Aurora Veil, since Brick Break is mostly just against Light Screen and Reflect. And then Light Clay will also affect the Aurora Veil, and if it's used by a Z move, the speed stat will increase by 1 stage, so there's things like that, and Infiltrator will just bypass it. So pretty much, it's Light Screen, Reflect, all bundled into one, and it only reduces damage by 1/3 in double battles. Now, a lot of people in the comment section were saying that I forgot about Aurora Veil and it reduces damage by half, so it's like the best thing to run on Ninetales, but since it looks to be only 1/3, that makes things kind of interesting, and it's the same for Light Screen and Reflect. So it's a pretty good move, but I don't think it's the only move that makes Ninetales viable, which is why I did the guide the way I did. However, we can go and look into some other things. You can still run the Focus Sash, but only get 5 turns with it, or you can run the Light Clay and then end up with 8 turns for that Aurora Veil, and then that's where you have to consider some other things going on. With the Snow Warning ability, it will cause hail, which means Ice-type Pokemon using Blizzard will love that, and there's also some specific abilities, like Ice Body and Snow Cloak, that also really want to be inside of that hail. But another thing to consider is that you can just run a normal Pokemon. A normal Pokemon with leftovers will cancel out the hail damage, or just something that eats up the hail because you're reducing damage. So it would rather take 1/16 from hail than a full damage attack, and Garchomp or just ground type Pokemon are going to be really good coverage because Ninetales will be resisted by fire and steel type Pokemon, so you can run that out, and then you bring in a bulkier Pokemon that has to worry about damage even less because of the Aurora Veil, but then that kind of just limits Ninetales, that you effectively use it to run the Light Clay, do a very tiny amount of damage with Blizzard, because, alright, here's where Aurora Veil starts getting interesting, that if you're running the Focus Sash, it guarantees your survival from a hit from mostly just a faster Pokemon that's very powerful. With the Aurora Veil, if you're outspeeding, you're likely to survive anyways now that you have the defensive boost, so it kind of becomes an effective Focus Sash, or at least an extra chance for survival that you didn't have, and then the Light Clay can be useful in that way. Other than that, we're not running the Life Orb, so we're losing damage, we're giving up a little bit of coverage, and then we have like Blizzard, and then whatever, Moonblast, Protect. You know, you can run something like that. Maybe even give yourself the Hidden Power Ground if you want those super effective hits. But the problem about Hidden Power Ground is that it's only going to be good against resisted hits, because Hidden Power Ground, well, that's 120 base power and a super effective hit. Blizzard with Stab and not missing in Hail is just going to be more damage overall than even a super effective Hidden Power. So there's weird things to consider right there, and also in my Ninetales guide, I did include some other moves like the Charm. Now, by comparison, Charm is going to be stronger than the Aurora Veil, since Aurora Veil only reduces damage by 1/3. Charm is going to cut that damage in half from a physical attacker, so it still shows that there are some other options that you can run on the Ninetales. Still have the Encore, you still have the Disable, you can still do some other things, but the Aurora Veil does keep your team safe, and maybe if you're playing up to that, you can run Pokemon like the Glaceon. So Glaceon, it can stab an insanely powerful Blizzard, you can run the Life Orb, you can run the Choice Specs. Life Orb effectively just like lets you Shadow Ball Alolan Marowak and some other Pokemon that would resist your Blizzard, but if you're fully committed to the insane Blizzard damage, then yeah, Specs Glaceon has the Ice Body so it can heal up some of the damage from a Life Orb, or you can also just go for Snow Cloak, and then you're good to go. Also, Ice Body will just heal you in general, so 1/16 after taking the reduced damage is going to make Glaceon a lot tankier than it should be. So you have a Pokemon that might survive 3 hits instead of 2, and then you're just doing insane amounts of damage on the Blizzard. As we've shown, the Blizzard Specs Glaceon is enough to just KO a Tapu Koko straight up, even in doubles with that reduced damage. So there's a lot of really cool things that happen. Then if we throw on the light screen, we can see that it's going to be reducing Thunderbolt by a lot more. You're healing up a little bit as well. So the Glaceon gets a lot more powerful under that Aurora Veil, but it's kind of just distracting from Ninetales, that you're taking away from Ninetales' strength. It's pretty much, you're only here for Snow Warning, you're only here for Veil, and then whatever else Ninetales does kind of doesn't even matter. And I felt that was a little too throwaway, but depending on how you're building your team around it, Hail needs a lot of support. Like, Hail did get the Aurora Veil, but even when you look at Aurora Veil, it doesn't add too much. And a lot of Pokemon that get it can't really make use of it. That the best Pokemon for Aurora Veil is going to be Ninetales because it sets the Hail, it can use the Veil, and then all the other Pokemon aren't really super fast. So we have Frostlass as the fastest Pokemon that can set it. We have Cryogonal with the 105, and then I was thinking about Z moves, but really it's like Jinx, 95 base speed, Z move for the Aurora Veil with a 115 special attack. So we don't have like the most powerful Pokemon out there. That the highest damage is going to come from Jinx or Glaceon, and then the fast Pokemon are going to be Frostlass, Cryogonal, or Ninetales. And then that leaves the question if Ninetales is just the best Snow Warning or best Aurora Veil Pokemon. And that's where it gets complicated, because now, because of Snow Warning in the 7th generation, we have other Pokemon that get access to it. We have the Vanillux getting a buff and including Snow Warning in its ability, and also we've always had Abomasnow and Aurorus, so we can see what to do right here, and now it's going to be about different kinds of combos, but it does limit. I feel that that's one of the bigger problems with Aurora Veil, is that the Pokemon that get access to it have limited coverage. It's pretty much just Ice, and then Pokemon that also get access to the Snow Warning, it's effectively the same thing. So yeah, we could have 2 Pokemon. We have Vanillux with the Snow Warning, and then we can bring in something else like the Frostlass. That way we can go and set up a fast Aurora Veil, and then try to keep everyone safe. So that's going to keep your Pokemon safe in a different way, and then also give you access to other moves like the Will-O-Wisp, Shadow Ball, and then Blizzard coverage. So you can do stuff like that, and it's effectively going to be slightly faster than the Alolan Ninetales with this setup, less damage by a very tiny amount, and then whatever Vanillux wants to do. Because Vanillux still has a respectable amount of special attack and a decently surprising amount of bulk. So maybe you can just go for a Scarf into Modest Nature for the most damage into the Blizzard, and then use Frostlass for little bits of extra coverage and stuff like that as Vanillux takes less damage. But it shows that you're going to have to split up the strategy, that Ninetales is the all-in-one for Aurora Veil if you want to run it that way. But you can still do some other things, and there's always the chance for freeze. That Blizzard does have a 10% chance to freeze, and if you're landing it twice on 2 opponents, maybe something silly will happen right there. The Will-O-Wisp will just be guaranteed some kind of status onto the opponent that reduces physical damage. So you can try to work it for Shutdown like that. And another weird thing is that Light Screen is available on the Vanillux. So Light Screen does stack with the Aurora Veil. So it's like, you could Aurora Veil, Light Screen with the Vanillux, have Frostlass with Will-O-Wisp, and then you're going to be able to do more. So that's another reason why I wanted to separate out this video, because it's cool to also just talk about Aurora Veil and Hail combos and things you can do with that, but at the same time you still have a lot of weakness. 1 strong Fire-type Pokemon can wreck you. 2 strong Fire-type Pokemon, it doesn't matter like how many Light Screens and Reflectors setting up. Steel-type Pokemon, anything that just crushes Ice-type Pokemon is going to be an issue regardless, but if you can kind of work around that, you know, you can do some really fun things. Also, Frostlass does get the Snow Cloak, so there's a chance that your opponent can miss while you're throwing out the Will-O-Wisp, while you're doing Aurora Veil things behind Light Screen, so you can play it more like Frustration, but not like this most meta-breaking, insane strategy. And I don't think Hail will ever be there, unfortunately. That you look at Sunny Day. Sunny Day has boosted damage to Fire-type moves, and also abilities that synergize with it, like Chlorophyll. Rain gets an insane amount of support that Hurricane can't miss, Thunder can't miss, Water gets boosted damage, Fire gets resisted damage. We have a ton of Swift Swim Pokemon, but Hail has Slush Rush and Ice Body and then Snow Cloak, and that's kind of it. So there's a chance that that might actually really come into play at some point. But with this, don't expect the most out of it. And that's why I didn't want to make Aurora Veil just like this entire guide about the Ninetales. Like, use Aurora Veil, try to cover for another Pokemon, because there's a lot more interesting things besides the Ninetales with Aurora Veil, and Ninetales is also a lot more complex than that. That you have a Blizzard Moonblasting ultimate dragon killing Pokemon with a respectable amount of speed. Maybe you could play just some more offensive stuff and then try to combo it as an offensive support instead of Aurora Veil and then die, when you can look at some other Pokemon that can do some cheesy stuff with the Aurora Veil as well, and then try to just diversify your portfolio of ice and shenanigans. So hopefully this ends up helping out with what you can do, and now let's go and look at some damage calculations and just wrap up what we're talking about with the Aurora Veil. So it doesn't really speak much for the strategy, and then that means you're effectively running a 3v4, so your other Pokemon's supposed to really heavily carry while only reducing a third of damage, which means super effective hits can still knock out that Pokemon, and there's still a lot of scary things. Like, Ninetales could just get outsped and blown up before it gets a chance to set the Aurora Veil, so that could be an issue right there. And then also looking for the proper team synergy. That's easy to say, yeah, Garchomp, but then looking at some other Pokemon that just don't want to take a third damage, you need some fast Pokemon, you need some hard-hitting Pokemon, and then does Ninetales have enough to follow it up with a Blizzard, because 81 base special attack. So that's why I wanted to do this video separately. If I talked about Aurora Veil, we'd have like a 30-minute video on the Ninetales, and let's go and just check out some extra little bit of damage calculations. So Chandelure still absolutely nukes us with the Light Screen. Like, Light Screen is effectively the Aurora Veil. So Overheat's enough to KO. Fire Blast, high chance to KO, and this is not Specs. Like, if it was Specs, if it was Life Orb, then it's going to be very likely for a Pokemon like that, but this is overwhelmingly high amounts of damage, so it does show that against, like, very powerful Fire-type hits, especially Heat Wave. Heat Wave already has split damage, so if you have the Light Screen on top of that, it's going to make it a lot more difficult for Pokemon that are double targeting to go and take out your Ninetales. However, at the same time, if we're running the Reflect, Iron Head Garchomp, so Steel-type moves are still going to absolutely wreck us. The Stab Steel move is pretty much lights out, even with the Aurora Veil setup. So Scarf Steel moves are going to be an issue. If we survive it, it's like, that's kind of it. Alolan Ninetales, it gets the Aurora Veil, it gets knocked out, and then you bring in bulky, harder hitting Pokemon to try to make use of what's going on for the last couple of turns for the Aurora Veil. And if you want to run your Ninetales like that, you can. And then you can follow it up with something filthy like the Celesteela that gets a couple of turns of setup. The Alolan Muck could be very terrifying as well, or just a sweeper Pokemon that would normally get KO'd by something but has just enough to survive and then can just spit out insane amounts of damage. So that's kind of showing that, yeah, we're still susceptible, but it is effective even though it's only 1/3 damage reduction, and it does apply for the whole team for a couple of turns. So that was just kind of like the look into Aurora Veil. It complicates Ninetales, which is already kind of complicated. You can certainly just run it if you need to, and then, yeah, it combos pretty well, and the damage calculations do get a little better. So if you guys enjoy the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.